Welcome to another episode of the Trusted Advisor podcast and video series powered by the Retail Solutions Providers Association. Our goal on the pod is to accelerate the success of today's and tomorrow's leaders in the retail IT industry. I'm Jim Roddy, back with you again. Thank you so much for joining us. In this episode, we'll focus on ISV growth strategies in a changing channel with two special RSPA members who lead ISV software companies. Our first guest today is Ben Leviton, the co-founder and director of business development at Acadia Point of Sale based in Maine. Originally a browser-based point-of-sale system, Acadia is now an omni-channel solution specializing in high-volume multi-location merchants in the restaurant and retail verticals. And Ben just exhibited at Retail Now in the first ever RSPA niche and ISV Startup Alley. Hey, Ben, great to talk with you today.
Great to be here. Great to be here.
And Ben, you and I both started our year at a trade show at NRF, an event that was sparsely attended because it was the middle of the Omicron. But you and I got to hang out there for a little bit. So we've certainly had an interesting year, and we've seen our share of trade shows for sure, the sparsely attended and the busy ones like Retail Now.
Yeah, it was great being at Retail Now. It was actually our first. I mean, we've attended other trade shows in the past, and we were at the Star booth over at the NRF actually, but this was our first booth, so it was really a great experience, and it was really great to be a part of the community and to share our solutions with everyone.
Beautiful. Well, thanks for doing that. And our second guest also exhibited at Retail Now, Jason Richelson, the co-founder and CEO of Bookkeep, an automation platform for accountants, bookkeepers, and business owners. Jason began his career as a PricewaterhouseCoopers systems analyst before launching several companies, including InternetCash.com, The Green Grape Grocery, Simply Wine, and the one that I'm most familiar with, ShopKeep. Jason was one of the featured panelists for the ISV education track at Retail Now, discussing ISV opportunities and challenges in today's market. Jason, thanks so much for speaking at the show, and thanks for talking with us today.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, great to be here. So I brought up earlier, you both attended Retail Now and you both had booths there. For those who aren't familiar with Retail Now, you must be new to the podcast because we've been talking about it all year long. Retail Now is held July 24th through 26th in Orlando, attracted 1,500 solution providers, VARs, ISVs, vendors to the Gaylord Palms there. And one of the big shifts that we saw was on the show floor, shifting from a payments focus to a software focus. So this year, only 13% of the booths on the show floor were payments focused, and over 40% of them were software developers. And Jason, I'm hoping you can take this question first. Can you share from your show experience through the perspective of an ISV, like how was the event for you being an ISV at that event? And then talk about where you see the retail IT industry morphing, where software companies are really increasing their impact and prominence. So Jason first, and then Ben.
Yeah, it was a really great event for us because we work with a lot of the software providers who were there at RSPA. I started, my career has been in point of sale for the past 10, 12, 13 years. And one of the things that, we'll get into what Bookkeep does, but basically what Bookkeep does is help fix a problem with point of sale and e-commerce, which is proper accounting entries and making proper integrations to accounting platforms. It's always been a big pain point. So for us, it was really great to be there because we could talk to a lot of the software vendors that were there, as well as the payment providers, because it's the same situation for them as well. So it was a great show that it wasn't just payment providers. It was, showing there's a lot more value there, I would say, than just the payment providers.
Yeah, and you bring up something I've been calling cross-pollination, where, a lot of times you have a booth and whoever shows up at your booth, that's who you can work with. But it seems like what you said, there were so many software developers there, they could all work with each other. So you needed to have one person at the booth and then one person going to the other booths to see about potential partnerships. Is that something that sounds like you experienced that as well?
It is. It's something that I generally do. And I think we're somewhat unique in that we can partner with most of the vendors that are on the floor for what we do, because everyone needs an accounting integration. So it was unique for us, and it really was a great show for us because of that reason. But yeah, it's definitely changing because I've been in the space for a long time, and payments are super important, but as there's different ways to deliver payments through software. Obviously with Square, I was there as part of that with ShopKeep. It becomes, the value really is in the software, and that's really where the RSPA, where software integrated with payments is super important. It's a super important event for that.
Great, thank you for that. Ben, can you talk about, from your perspective, being in Startup Alley, and then also just as a software developer executive attending the event? What was your take? What were some of your takeaways?
Yeah. So I agree with what you're saying, that the lines are definitely blurred these days between payments and software companies. You know, even the traditional payments companies are using software, to differentiate their offerings, even when it with traditional payment terminals. I mean, we have smart terminals, and there's so much innovation that's happening. So yeah, being at Startup Alley was great. I actually I got to speak to the fellow who co-founded PC America, which was kind of cool, and speak to him, and really interesting folks with different solutions out there. It's always interesting to understand the history of where things came from, but also see kind of where things are headed. Um, so yeah, it was a great experience, just connecting with everyone, and seeing all the great solutions out there.
Yeah, well, the PC America executive that you reference is Rich Rotbard from Soup, SOOP, where you can order from a restaurant just using text messages, is what they do. So yeah, Rich has been certainly active ever since he launched Soup. So all right, so folks might be saying, all right, let me understand what Bookkeep does, and let me understand what Acadia does, because no ISV is the same. No two software companies are identical. So Jason, can you talk about, you touched on a little bit, the niche you focus on today, and can you also talk about, was that the original outset of the business, or have you adapted it ever since you launched the company?
That's a good question. We did start as a bookkeeping firm and we still have a couple bookkeeping customers. And at my I just like to automate. I don't think people should have to do data entry, and so I was looking to automate all the functions around bookkeeping. And it turns out that there's a lot of different tools that people can use for automating bookkeeping. It's still at least 50% data entry is what bookkeeping is, if not more. And what I found though is the same problem that I had when I was at ShopKeep. What I've seen, which is just getting proper accounting information out of your point of sale or e-commerce system into a bookkeeping or accounting platform, is really difficult because engineers tend to not fully understand how to do accounting entries, and they also don't want to deal with the accounting integrations. They don't want to deal with the API calls. They don't want to deal with the errors, and they don't want to have what is essentially a very different customer calling them and asking them questions. Why did my accounting entry not post? Why aren't the numbers adding up? Because the accountants look at things differently than a sales platform would look at it, than a Shopify or an e-commerce platform. They want to see the numbers in a different way. So it's a very fascinating little sector that is very, very needed. And what often happens, so what we're doing is we're solving a problem for software vendors where you don't want to build an accounting integration to Square, to Zero, I'm sorry, to Shop, to QuickBooks, to Zero, to NetSuite, to Intact, to QuickBooks Desktop, because you don't want to have to manage all that. So you don't want that problem. You don't want to deal with the customer service aspects of it. But then on the flip side, bookkeepers and accountants they're so frustrated that they don't even bother to complain anymore. If there's take just for example, it's not even a point of sale. Take Uber Eats. Uber Eats has hundreds of thousands of locations. Every bookkeeper must log in to Uber Eats and download reports and type them in to the accounting platform. There's no other way to do it. They don't even bother complaining about it because they know nobody listens to them. So we're really trying to solve that problem for those accountants, is automate that part of their lives, because they don't want to be doing data entry, but they know that no one listens to them. So I haven't solved the Uber Eats problem because Uber Eats also doesn't care about the accountants, but we'll eventually figure it out. So we really want to be that interface between e-commerce and sales and payment systems, by the way. And we also are big in cannabis as well. So cannabis point of sales have some specialized needs, and they also use some specialized payment providers like a Stronghold Pay, for example, that does ACH payments for delivery. So we actually help. Besides posting the sales summary information, we then also work with the payment providers. We capture those batch deposits and we try and reconcile those batch deposits to the sales summaries so that they know that they got fully paid for the sales that happened on on these 3 days. Our system does that as long as we have access to the payment deposit systems, which granted, we're still early days, but once we can get access to all these things, all these different platforms, we can really automate the reconciliation of the payment deposits to the sales, which includes posting all the fees, any loans withdrawn from those deposits, any tips get posted properly, sales tax gets posted properly. So we handle all of that properly. The more companies that can work with us to get the data into our platform, the better we can support the accountants.
Got it. And so first, thank you for those details. Just a couple clarifying questions, then an observation. How would you describe the size of your company? Like when I ask software developers, usually I ask how many employees do you have, but you could be outsourcing. There's a whole bunch of different ways to look at it, and ISVs can operate super efficiently. When someone says, tell me about the size of your company, how would you answer that question?
Yeah. Yeah, I usually do talk in employees. I mean, our revenue is very low. We're still, we're a small funded company. It's a long road ahead of us. I want to automate a lot of the bookkeeping. Another problem in the accounting and bookkeeping space is that it's very hard to even find people to do this work, and so they end up offshoring it, where it's just data entry offshored. So we have a very long, road ahead of us. But we're 25 people, although half of those are contracts. Contract employees, but we consider them all employees here. So we're about 25 people strong, and we're automating at scale for a lot of from $100 million a year businesses down to about $250,000 a year. Those are the type of entities that are using our platform, but we tend to work for the bookkeepers and accountants more than the direct businesses.
Got it. Thank you. And I'll just an observation before we ask Ben about his business. So the RSPA is moving out. We're going to 100% virtual work environment because we have one full-time and one part-time employee in Charlotte. Everybody else is all around the country. So we're selling our Charlotte office. So I was down there a couple days last week dealing with all the filing cabinets that were there. I mean, the amount of paperwork that was there. And to your point, to go through and just see emails that say, hey, so-and-so is due a bonus or change their pay to whatever. We're every week seeing different payroll numbers handwritten in there. And this wasn't like 100 years worth of data. Like I'm talking going back 5 years, 7 years, up to, 10, 12 years, something like that. Just the mountain of paperwork and the mountain of time that I just thought it took for them to put that together. That's what it seems like. If you would be able to eliminate that data entry, it seems like it'd be a godsend, but also seems like it'd be incredibly difficult to do.
Well, accounting industry is still very somewhat, I wouldn't say backwards, but there's still a little slower to adopt automation. So there is still a lot of manual entry, and the industry is changing as younger people come into the industry. However, not as many are coming in as used to come in, which means there's not a lot of the amount of people that really understand how things work and understand how to use technology is much smaller than it has been. And so automation is really the solution, I think, to a lot of that. It'll happen because it's just got to happen because there's going to be no other way to do it.
Yeah. Great. Ben, tell us about Acadia. And I know before, we hit record on this, you guys were talking about that there might be an opportunity for you two to work together. But tell folks, what does Acadia do? Where'd you come from? Size of company, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure. We started back in December of 2016, and at the time, when we started, we were actually supporting an open source point of sale, which was kind of interesting. I mean, essentially the software is open source, but you need people to customize it and make changes to it. And we didn't really necessarily like the direction that it was going in, and it wasn't necessarily the cool solution either. It wasn't necessarily like the Square or the Clover. So our focus was actually gardening supply centers, and that was the primary focus at the time. But we wanted to focus more on just general POS, and we even restaurants, which we do now. But at the time, we had a significant merchant base. Now it seems insignificant, but we had a decent amount of customers, and their needs were not very complicated needs. Merchants with 100,000 plus SKUs. Very large merchants. So some of the first merchants that we signed up, this was back in 2016. Their needs, warehouse-based inventory. We've always been a cloud system. Every feature, every setting is on the web. So we've always been listening to our customers. Getting feedback from them. But anyway, we started working on our own solution, back in December of 2016. Migrating some of our existing customers over, but then really, working on the lowest level, with the smallest merchants, just kind of listening to them, understanding what their needs were. And some of these small merchants do become big merchants too. So it's kind of interesting. But yeah, we've been having fun with it. We're enjoying it. We're working with a lot of traditional players. And that's why we're here, part of the RSPA, to really see, how we can benefit the community with our solutions.
So great. Two questions for you. First, size of company. If you want to talk about employees, merchants, things like that. How big is Acadia at this point?
Yeah, yeah. So we've always been small. A lot of companies talk about how big they are. We talk about how small we are, and I mean, there's definitely advantages to being big and growing, and we're certainly on that path. But we're about 5 people strong currently. 50% of our resources are engineering resources, so we've always been very strong, on the engineering side. But yeah, we're definitely not just throwing stuff up against the wall just to see what's going to stick. We're working with customers that make sense, and we're growing our merchant base. But yeah, definitely a growing small company, a little bit smaller than our friend over here, but certainly not. We're not venture funded, so that's
Yeah.
kind of the advantage, is that we've done it independently, and not to say there's anything wrong with VC, but we've been able to grow kind of at our own pace without having to feel a lot of pressure, which is nice.
And can you talk about, we're going to get into, because I want to talk about go-to-market strategies and have you guys kind of, critique and ask each other questions about them. But I'm curious, like you could see Jason was like, I'm doing the bookkeeping thing and the automation, and then has made some morphing inside of that space. But how do you go from garden shops to restaurants? Like, did
Mhm.
that happen serendipitously, or
Yeah,
was it something that you're like,
it well,
here's
it,
our
it didn't.
strategy?
Yeah, that's a great question. It didn't happen overnight. And certainly, yeah, the first restaurant we ever did, I mean, it was and they're still with us. It's really interesting, but it was a lot of pain. The POS, I sometimes say it should be called PAS, a pain and suffering, right? There's definitely it's a lot of working hands-on with these customers, listening to their needs. So we did start out with, we've always been strong for multi-location, unlike Square. So like if you log into Square, for example, and there's larger merchants on Square. I'm not saying that it's all small merchants, but they do advertise for smaller merchants. But you have one account, and if you open up a second location or a third location, well, you got to set up a new Clover account, and a whole new account. Well, with our system, even since the very beginning, if you have 5 stores, 10 stores, you log in, you see all your locations on your dashboard. If you click on an item, you can see where that item is located in every location. So there are a lot of solutions out there like Clover, as I said, that are very powerful, very strong solutions. But we've been able to find a niche, and working with customers where they have needs that are not being met, and we've been able to meet those needs.
Got it. So your niche wasn't so much the vertical itself. Your niche is where they have the needs to be able to
Yeah, yeah, like we can
sell
do a
that.
winery, for example, where there's a retail component. It doesn't mean that we're right for every single restaurant, but let's just say there's a restaurant, there's a winery there, and they want to have the same dashboard. Some other folks might say, oh, well, like, Spot On might say, oh, we're going to put in Spot On restaurant, but then we might put in Vend or something for the retail, not Vend anymore. But I don't know, I don't want to talk too much about different companies, but my point is that with us, you could have it one dashboard and being able to manage, we could do a place like Cracker Barrel where there's a country store, and a restaurant, especially if they want to incorporate mobile devices, especially if they want to incorporate handhelds into the equation, and,
Got it.
and do the order and pay at the table.
Got it. Well, thank you both for that. So
Yeah.
again, we've got the lay of the land in terms of what you guys do, what niche you fill. And Jason, can you start off? And I'm hoping you
Mhm.
can lay out for our audience, like talk about your go-to-market strategies. Like what
Mhm.
sales strategies have gotten you to where you are today? What are kind of your go-to-market plans for the next 12 to 18 months? Jason, I'm hoping you can give some details, and then Ben, you can give details. We're going to have a quick commercial break. They're going to flip, and so I'm going to ask each other,
Mhm.
what jumped out of the other person's
Mhm.
plans there. So take some good notes
Well,
here, Ben, as Jason's
well,
talking.
well, we got started. We kicked off in app stores, so we're in the QuickBooks App Store for a lot of our earlier integrations had public APIs, Square and Shopify, and so we are found in the QuickBooks App Store, the Square App Store, the Shopify App Store, that is still a big channel for us, and we do get some direct businesses through that. But we've changed because it tends to be a lot of smaller businesses that don't necessarily understand accounting or understand the need. Often they'll be like, my bookkeeper just does that, even though they don't realize their bookkeeper is doing it manually, and charging them an hourly fee to do it.
Hmm.
So we've changed our model, and we realized that we need to look at it, in order to scale, because yes, we're venture funded, so we do want to grow. We do have investors who expect faster growth, which I agree is not as much fun, but it worked for me at one time before. But we're basically realizing that partnership is a better way to go. So we partner with accounting firms. Once we find accounting firms that recognize the value of what we're doing, then we set up. They become a partner. They get a discount, and we have multiple ways. So we've rolled up billing. They can directly charge their client, and we give them a residual, or they can have a single bill and they can charge their client directly and we charge them at a discount. And so accounting firms, we even have e-commerce consulting firms who don't understand accounting, and they plug us in as that accounting piece. If they're a Shopify, they know how to set up the Shopify stores and set up all the, all the different pieces of that, but they don't know the accounting. But then we also recognize that, the point of sale vendors that we've started working with, we have a great relationship that started with Trees, which is a cannabis point of sale. That just happened naturally, honestly, just by luck. And he had a huge need because in cannabis, they get audited, these businesses, and they have finance teams, and they have to have their books done on time
Yeah.
and quickly. And he didn't want to deal with building accounting integration. So we jumped in and we're like, yeah, well, of course we can do this. We know how to do it for, whether it's cannabis or e-commerce or restaurant, it's all pretty much the same when it comes time to accounting. So we worked, we work with point of sale vendors as well and give them as well same partnership benefits as well. And we think, and that's a better way to be, because we want to support the point of sale providers, the e-commerce providers. I wish Shopify would work with us. They have an app store, but they don't promote us. But we try to leverage those relationships because we don't have a lot of people on the sales team, and sales is expensive, and we really need to shine through the product and the relationships. So that's kind of where we're going with that.
Yeah, thank you for that. A couple clarifying questions. One is like how you said it was luck for Trees, but like how did you find them, or did they find you, or do you happen to be on a plane
Uh,
together? Like what
Yeah,
went into
we
that?
we 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 did make a little bit of outreach, and then the CEO had recognized that I had started ShopKeep, so he knew who I was, and he's basically like, "Yeah, can you please just kind of do this for us?" We haven't had as much luck with other cannabis provider POS systems, but we're basically working with people who want to work with us, and hopefully providing value to their customers, making their customers happy, and we're growing as quickly as we can with those integrations. The other thing we're doing is we're trying to make integrating. Generally, when we integrate with a point of sale provider, we have to go and get data. We're trying to make it a lot easier to ingest data in multiple ways, so that the integration can be super easy, whether it's PDF parsing or CSV parsing, or if you don't have an API, or just email parsing, if you can send out email reports. Multiple simple ways to do it.
Got it. Great. And then how do you find these POS vendors in the future? Like you said, you have a sales team. Are they reaching out? Are they going to trade shows? Is it
We
lists? Is it
trade
industry
shows
connections?
Definitely trade shows have been important to us. Trade shows for us to sell into our accounting partners, because accountants really don't trust. There's a lot of people who come into the accounting space with apps, and they really want to know that you are human and that you're going to be around. So showing up at trade shows has been really worked out well for us. And it is those relationships when you're building partnerships. I think trade shows are really really great. It's hard to get attention, and even if getting the attention through content and otherwise, but you have to be there and actually shake hands and be. If someone might see your emails for a year, but when they see you at a conference, that's when they're like, okay, I think I'm ready to take the next step. So I think conferences are really important.
Got it. Thank you for that. All right, Ben, talk about your go-to-market strategy. Talked about how you've gotten to where you are now and some of your plans. I'm guessing they're not identical to what just Jason laid out. And then again, we'll give Jason a chance to ask you some questions.
Yeah, we've really adapted and changed, over the years. Like when we first started, it was really, hey, any customer is a good customer. Like any revenue is really good revenue, right? Because yeah, we're trying to survive and build, our initial merchant base and we've always been very customer focused, and it doesn't mean that hey, customers are saying jump and we're saying how high or anything like that, but really, some of the best features and the best ideas and the best stuff that we have is actually customer inspired. So, our go-to-market strategy initially was working with a lot of folks, that do merchant processing. Not necessarily always just hey, you plug in, your processing and that's it, but just really building those relationships and that's what we've done initially. We're still doing it, but we realized, hey, what we're doing is not necessarily the most scalable thing because of the high value, the support that we provide and the value that we deliver. So, we're really starting to focus on the channel now more than ever, and we're very serious about our dealer program and signing up dealers and just the value proposition, what we can offer these dealers that the traditional systems has either not provided or may not have the ability to provide. So yeah, that's really our focus now is hey, how can we show more people how to do what we've been doing and get them on board so they can do it too.
Got it. And let me ask, is your program, is your software simple enough that it can be resold? Because I know when I talk to a lot of niche software developers, it's so complex and they're like, all I can do is a referral program. Like, do you do a
Mm.
full that folks can go out and
Oh
represent you, or is it
yeah,
more of a
yeah,
referral program?
absolutely, absolutely, and that's what we're all about. Like, our sales pitch to dealers is like, hey, are you tired of screen share? Because like these dealers are constantly, and we are too, right? Everybody's always on screen share all the time, right? And some systems they say they're cloud, right, but means just hey, cloud reporting only. Like you're just getting reports. Like with our system, every single setting is on the web. Literally, you could be out to dinner and you launched a customer the other day and you forgot to enable a setting and you could text them and they could say, hey, did you enable that setting? Yep. Okay, hold on, I just enabled it, try it now. And so it's lower support costs, showing them how the cloud actually is going to
Mhm.
help their business, not that it's a scary thing, because it doesn't have to be scary, showing them how they have more control, that they can program and lock their own hardware. So yeah, our program is very
Mhm.
channel friendly. It puts them in control. It gives them complete control and being able to use any platform without any extra transaction fees or gateway fees, direct to the TSYS, direct to the First Data, direct to all the major platforms.
Oh, that's
So,
nice.
so yeah, that's really our focus. Is we're very channel friendly. We put the control in the partner's hands, and we see the dealer as the customer. That's how we see it. How do we how what can we provide to these dealers that they're not currently getting elsewhere? And that's actually was great about the conference too. We learned a lot, and we learned also about what dealers care about, and we're still learning. It's always a learning process.
Got it, for sure. Well, thank you. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick
Yeah.
break and pause here to let our listeners and viewers know an RSP membership has never been more valuable or more affordable. Annual memberships for VARs start at just $250 a year for dozens of high value services. And also, with this being a special episode where we're featuring software developers, we want to thank the sponsors of the RSPA niche and startup ISV community. Those sponsors are APG, Blue Star, Brinks, Epson, Evo, Ingenico, and ScanSource. Also, thanks to our sponsors who support the RSPA community and make this podcast and video series possible, our annual sponsors for 2022, Platinum sponsors Blue Star, Gold sponsors our Brother, Cocard, Heartland, ScanSource, and Shift4. To receive the benefits of an RSPA membership or sponsorship, email membership@gorspa.org. All right, Jason, so it's your turn. What jumped out to you from what Ben said about his growth plans or his go-to-market plans? Any thoughts or
Mhm.
questions you have for him in terms of used to be any customer, now they're more focused. They used to go with merchant processing, now very much channel focused, and also really pitching the ease of product to those
Yeah.
resellers. What jumped out to you?
Well,
What thoughts or questions?
well, definitely having everything online is great. I'm sure there's some hardware configuration that's complicated, but as I know from my experience at ShopKeep, and if you can go direct to those front end payment providers, then the payment sales reps or the ISOs should really be able to help you there because you're saving those customers money too on gateway fees a lot and complexity, which I think is great. Um, and I would say I I mean, I work with accountants. I know a lot of software payment providers actually are looking at the accounting channel as a way to sell, and I do think it's possible, but it is difficult to get accountants to sell other products. But I can tell you though what I have seen. I won't say the product, but I actually have converted, I can say off of Square, we have one accountant who's very, very sophisticated in a certain niche of business. And there's two different point of sales in that business. And she was not happy with the accounting integration of Square in that situation. I'm sorry, not Square, it was the other point of sale actually. And that other point of sales accounting integration was very poor. She switched 5 large clients off of that point of sale onto Square because of our account integration. So it is important. You can lose clients without knowing it. And in this particular point of sale vendor, I've reached out many times and said, listen, here's the screenshots of my emails with her that you've lost these clients because of your accounting integration. Can I please integrate with you? And they don't seem, so it's not necessarily going to always help you. It can help you if you have an accountant in a specific niche who if you can find those accountants, that could be another way. But you have to provide them with a really good accounting integration, which of course we can help you with. I'm not saying that it's an amazing new channel, but it can be used. But they don't like to sell. That's the thing. Accountants don't always like to sell, but they do like to say, yes, I've used this. I know it. I like it. Whatever that software
if
platform
you're familiar with it, sure.
Yeah, and so
that's
one recommendation.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, that's what I would say, and it is a tough space with. I know point of sale very well. It's a very tough space to sell, and it changes so often, and it's very sticky. It means it's hard to get in, and hard to make changes, but it's always changing. So and yes, the big squares of the world don't do everything for everybody. Certainly there's not the support that you always need in a small business.
Ben, your reaction to that?
Yeah, I would agree with what he said, and just on a private note, we could certainly talk after the show about the integration, but our approach to integrations has always been, well, hey, let's not, we don't have to build this huge business case like necessarily. Let's find a single customer, that wants to utilize this, and let's test it out with them, right? And this way we can understand the value proposition. And it's not that we can do everything, like certain things like I know that like NCR Silver, for example, they have like some marketing thing and you can send out emails and there's a couple templates to choose from and this and that. And we realized, hey, look at MailChimp. MailChimp has, it's basically free for up to 2,000 contacts. Like, why are we going to build marketing? And like, let's just add a MailChimp integration, right?
Yeah.
So we have, we are doing integrations, and that's what's so great about RSPA, is that we can definitely come together and not, it doesn't mean every solution is going to be a good fit, but it does mean, that there are a lot of solutions out there, and the more solutions out there, that's the better for the customer, the end user.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we're all about that. And there could be two solutions for the same problem. We're fine with that too. It's just a matter of understanding what our customers need, and that's really where we're focused.
And providing those APIs. I mean, that's the great thing about services and services integration, which is APIs. Square is actually super strong there, although they have some huge glaring missing pieces of their API. Specifically, cost of goods sold is not, or unit costs of items and inventory is not in their API, which is just I can't even understand. But being that Acadia is all web based, that's really a great thing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what it's all about. I think there's actually another partner called Near Street, for example, that reached out to us, and we referred them to RSPA, and they love the fact we showed them our API. They're like, we can integrate with this, like, and use it. They're like, hey, the next step, like, it's so great having that where it doesn't mean that API could do everything, right? I'm sure Square's API might even do things, yeah, ours doesn't do. But if we run across situations, because we are smaller, where we have partners suppliers and they're like, hey, we really need this this ability, or how can we do that? We can accommodate those requests. Absolutely. Yeah.
Excellent. Good stuff. All right, Ben, now it's your turn. And so I'm going to give a quick summary of what Jason said from his go-to-market standpoint. He said, they really started in app stores, but
Yep.
now they're also partnering with accounting firms and e-commerce consulting firms, and then doing a lot of POS integrations. He gave the example of trees, also some accounting integrations, and then trying to make it as easy as possible to integrate the data, and then has been attending a lot of shows as well to find folks face-to-face. So what questions, comments, thoughts do you have on Jason's and ShopKeep's go-to-market plan, or Bookkeep's? I'm
Bookkeep.
sorry.
Yeah. Well, yeah. The main question I had is like, what do you do to really to get their attention? Because just like I know in my experience, like with point of sale, right? People have, some people care about it, some people have needs for point of sale.
Mhm.
But it's the hardest part sometimes is, hey, like getting folks, getting their attention and everything. So what is the how do you get to some of these traditional, or even, cloud, all the different POS people? What's your key, like, how do you get their attention and get them to look at your solution?
Well, we are definitely, I mean, you take a little where you can get it, right? The POS
Right.
providers, some of them might be interested in it, and we try and jump on that if we can. The ones that aren't, my goal is that the accountants eventually are all going to love us, and eventually the accountant's going to say, you can't use a point of sale unless it works with Bookkeep. And then once the accountants are saying that, then hopefully the Uber Eats are
Oh,
calling me and saying, we need to integrate with you guys. And we
and
really want to be that accounting gateway, like a payments gateway, where everyone understands that to do it right and to pass the data properly from e-commerce, sales, payments world into accounting world, you need to use Bookkeep to get it done right. So just by building the brand, getting accountants to love us, and trying to work with as many point of sale providers as they're interested to work with us right now, that's kind of where we are right now. We can't force. It's just one of these things. You can't force a point of sale provider, and I just say that generically. It could be an e-commerce provider like Uber Eats as the example. Like, they don't want to talk to me. They don't care. They're like, no accountants are buying Uber Eats. They're selling it into these restaurants. The
right.
restaurants don't always.
By the way, that's the thing. It's
Yeah,
interesting that you mentioned that. I hate to interrupt, but with our
yeah,
Uber Eats sales, they actually are integrated into the POS. So if you had access to our
yeah.
POS data, you would see the Uber Eats data too.
We do
So we
see
are
it there, but
integrated.
what we're missing is
Yeah.
all the fees that Uber Eats takes out, which is most
The
likely
fees,
why they
yeah.
don't want to
Okay, you're
integrate.
right. You're right. You don't get that. Okay.
Because
All
what you
right.
see
Yeah.
with Uber Eats is when you see the deposit, I mean, what we do is the payment deposit reconciliation. So that $100 in sales from Uber Eats ends up being like $60 hitting your bank account. But you need to
Oh.
know, of that $100, $20 was sales tax, $30 was tips. The rest was food, except Uber Eats is taking out 30% of fees, which is 5% for credit card processing and 25% for our marketing fees. And that's the things that accountants need.
Hmm.
On the front end, you need what all the items are, where it's being delivered to, what the totals are. The accountants need to know all the stuff I just talked about. And that's where, like, we're trying to piece it together from what we see in the bank account versus what comes from the point of sale. And
Now,
that's, where it's complicated.
do you care if it's a cloud-based accounting platform, or if it's like, if it does it matter whether you're using QuickBooks for Windows or QuickBooks for web? Does that make a difference, or?
It does. Desktop is different. We don't currently integrate with desktop, but we would. We're considering it. We're more on QuickBooks Online for sure. I mean, most of our customers are QuickBooks Online and Zero as well. We have Zero.
Hmm.
QuickBooks
That's what I
Online is much
found.
stronger in the US though.
That's what I find. I find a lot of people have migrated to the QuickBooks for online
Mhm.
and then a lot of people, they've migrated to Zero because QuickBooks Online wasn't their cup of tea. So
Yeah.
it really depends. Yeah, it really depends.
Yeah.
I actually like the Zero. That's a
Yeah.
very good
And I use
platform.
Zero, and I have a test. I still own a wine store in California, um, which uses Square as the front end because I used it to
Mm,
build my Square integration, and it uses Zero as the accounting system so that I could test Zero. So in real world settings, and it's one of
makes
our one of.
sense.
So I fully understand, and I like Zero too actually as well. It's a little bit simpler, but accounting industry is huge, and they're pretty much on into it still. But there's others coming up. And by the way, there's 10 others that you've never heard of before that are coming up behind in the accounting space. So.
Tremendous. No, good conversation. This is part of, like Ben, you've been saying, like, here's what I really like about the RSPA. These are the real world discussions that take place inside of our association, right? It's not just like advertisement on top of advertisement on top of advertisement, right? We're like actually opening up the community, and you guys are seeing how you can work together, how you can bounce ideas off one another. So that was great to see them. All right, unfortunately, due to some technical difficulties, Ben has left the conversation. And so, Jason, why don't you give us the final word? We've talked a lot about change today. There's a lot of change going on in our industry, and a lot of folks fear it. But you've seen and experienced and driven a lot of change over the years. What is your perspective? What advice would you give to somebody who is fearing the future instead of being excited for it?
Yeah, you have to embrace the change because it's going to come from all different directions. In fact, I remember it was at RSPA when I think I can't remember who it was, but it was somebody who was saying there's no kid in his underwear is going to basically come up and change this industry with a whole new piece of software on the web. And I actually raised my hand and I said, well, I'm not in my underwear, but I actually am building a whole new point of sale system that might change the industry. And you never know where, and I was a grocery store owner, right? So you never know where it's going to come from, and there's all kinds of people out there. So just embrace it, and it's not a bad thing. You just have to keep learning, keep learning. That's really the most important thing.
Amen. Well said. Well, that does it for this episode of the Trusted Advisor podcast. We hope you enjoyed our discussion, and we hope you learned something as well. If you did, be sure to subscribe to the RSPA YouTube channel and the Trusted Advisor podcast so you never miss an episode. We'd also appreciate if you'd rate us wherever you find your favorite podcast. My personal philosophy is the more stars, the better. And if you'd like to learn more best practices for VARs and ISVs in the technology industry, check out the RSPA blog. You can find it by clicking on gorspa.org and then clicking on RSPA blog. Before we go, big thanks again to Ben and Jason for sharing their wisdom with us today. Thanks also to RSPA Marketing Director Chris Arnold for his production work, Joseph McDade for our music, and last but not least, thanks so much to you for listening. Our goal at the RSPA is to accelerate the success of our members in the retail technology ecosystem by providing knowledge and connections. For more information, visit our website at gorspa.org. Thanks again for listening, and goodbye, everybody.